For a look at whatever the hell is going on in New York City, which I've struggled to comprehend, we are joined by a great friend of the show, journalist Ross Barkan, who is a contributing writer for New York Times Magazine. Great to see you, sir.
Great to have me and great to be back.
Great to have me. I like that. More people need to say that. Let's go ahead and put this first tear sheet up on the screen. This is the latest New York Times accounting of some of the developments with Eric Adams and his circle. The headline here is pressure grows on Mayor Adams as key officials leave amid investigations. We just had two prominent officials resign. We had the police commissioner resigned on Thursday at the request of City Hall. Lisa Zornberg, the mayor's chief legal advisor, resigned abruptly on Saturday. Largely, they say in frustration over the mayor's refusal to follow her advice on personnel matters. As I was looking into this, there seemed to be more than a dozen Eric Adams associates who are under some sort of investigation. He himself appears to be under investigation for relationships with the country of Turkey. Can you just help us understand what's going on here and if these are all just like individuals doing their own thing or if it really all goes back to Mayor Adams himself?
Excellent question. What's going on? So there are at least 4 federal investigations into Eric Adams and his administration. It is not clear at this point if Adams himself is a target. His phone in one of the investigations was seized. So right now, you had the police commissioner who recently resigned because he is under investigation because his twin brother, stay with me, was running a consulting firm of some sort that was helping in quotation marks, restaurants and businesses deal with various nightlife complaints. And this business of this twin brother would allegedly go over to these restaurants and tell them, hey, we can make these complaints go away if you pay us a fee. So you have a sort of possible favor trading there. You have a completely separate investigation into Eric Adams' possible, his mayoral campaign's possible ties to the Turkish government, possibly taking foreign money, which is illegal. You have another investigation into a consulting firm being run by a close Adams ally, Tim Pearson, who's very close with the NYPD. You have his deputy mayor for public safety, another Adams ally, Philip Banks. He had his phone seized. And then there's yet another investigation. So the question is, where does this all go? What does this all mean? It's all very confusing. There are a lot of moving parts. We do not know, obviously, the outcome, if Adams himself will be indicted. I will say no sitting mayor of New York City has ever been indicted, but there's always time. There's always a first time for something, right? But already Adams has had people in his administration indicted. In another separate case, his buildings commissioner resigned over an indictment related to a completely separate corruption probe. So you have many different corruption probes. You have a lot of possibilities for further resignations. And you have a city that, quite frankly, a city government that is somewhat paralyzed right now, that is not governing. It wasn't governing very well before all this started, but certainly now even less is happening.
Sticking with that, I want to talk to my personal favorite, which is this idea of business owners being forced to pay protection racket money. Can you tell us some of the details on this? Is one of those which is often alleged in movies. I did realize it was somewhat real, this idea of like having a pension benefit card, any of that, but this seems to go up to the highest levels of the New York administration. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. So again, this is all, in various reports that have been verified in the sense that they're in mainstream outlets, but the indictment has not been brought. So basically, as far as we understand, the former police commissioner who just resigned, named Edward Caban, he has a twin brother, James. James, a former NYPD officer who was forced out a long time ago and had issues. He was running this private firm that, as far as I understand, would go to restaurants or nightclubs, or nightclubs would come to them either way. The nightclub would have, maybe they're having an issue with a noise complaint or something with the city. They've been slapped with, some type of fine or something else, right? These things happen. And so this firm would help you deal with these issues and would take a fee, right? Of course, the firm is being run by the twin brother of the police commissioner. So you can imagine some of the conflict of interest issues that might surface.
Yeah, and how they're securing that help.
Yeah, help.
Whether this is enough to warrant a crime in the sense that an indictment will come, we don't know.
Yeah.
But this is one of the investigations, and it has been enough to force the police commissioner to resign. New York is now on its third police commissioner in a 3-year period, which is quite insane.
Right.
We had 3 police commissioners in 8 years under Bill de Blasio, and then 1 under Michael Bloomberg. So 3 in 3 years is.
So this is perhaps an impossible question to answer, but you can feel free to baselessly speculate. You know, are these the sort of things that are just like always going on in New York City government, but normally don't see the light of day, and some, you know, federal prosecutor, investigator, whatever, got to be in their bonnet and decide they're actually going to crack down on it? Or do you think that there is an atypical level of pay-to-play corruption scheming occurring under the Adams administration?
I think it's atypical. So I will say there have been investigations into prior mayors. There are inevitably scandals of some sort. Bill de Blasio was investigated. No charges were ever filed. Michael Bloomberg himself was not investigated, but there was this City Time scandal many years ago that damaged his administration. But this is unusual. You do not see this many investigations. And I think what strikes me is the brazenness. It's very much old school machine politics, but I would add it's old school machine politics without the delivery of public goods attached to it. So we looked at like the old Tammany Hall model. It was corrupt. It was what they would used to call honest graft. You would take money and get rich, but in turn, you'd be kind of delivering something for your constituents. I've argued for a while now, putting aside all the corruption, Adams has not been a very effective mayor because he hasn't accomplished very much.
Yeah.
And I think most voters look at him and just see a mayor flailing about, who's not serious, and who now appears to be corrupt, and they don't see their city getting better, and they don't see what they're getting in return. I think that's a big issue for him. So it's atypical to see this many investigations. And then further, I'd say it's atypical in certainly modern times for a mayor to be 3 years plus into their first term and not really have any signature achievement that people can remotely talk about or remember.
Yeah, so we got to get back to those good old Tammany Hall days.
I agree.
Honest graph. Ross, at the same time, I also wanted to get you to weigh on an extraordinary and deeply disturbing situation that's unfolding. There are protests now over the NYPD's bloody handling of a fare evader on the subway system. We put up E2, guys, just to see a little bit of the protests over this NYPD shooting various people over this fare evasion. We could go ahead and put also this tear sheet up on the screen to talk about some of the details here. 4 people were shot after police opened fire on what they're describing as a knife-wielding subway fare evader. Some questions now emerging about that knife. I'll let you lay that out for us, Ross. But effectively what they say is that 4 people were shot, including a New York police officer by quote-unquote friendly fire, when 2 officers opened fire while pursuing a subway rider who didn't pay his fare. The man jumped back onto the subway platform, started approaching one of the officers with this alleged knife. Both officers fired their guns. As they handcuffed the man, one of the officers realized he himself had been shot, was bleeding from his chest. The bullet struck under the officer's left armpit, missing his vest and lodging in his back. 2 random innocent bystanders, a man and a woman, also shot by police. The woman was grazed by a bullet, and the man was struck in the head. The suspect, whose name has not yet been publicly released, has apparently, long track record, arrested more than 20 times, history of mental illness, et cetera. But all of this starts with someone, effectively jumping the turnstile over a $2.90 subway fare.
Yes, and it's really a terrible episode. And I think it speaks to the fact that in too many cases, police are called in to handle issues or handling issues in such ways where they're not necessary, or certainly one should not be drawing their gun to stop a fare evader. I think that is the real problem. Supposedly he wielded a knife or brandished it, but then you're shooting enough to hit him, to hit others, to hit a police officer. So it's this rank incompetence combined with features of the system, which, you know, police are trained in a certain way. And there's also a big push now to crack down on fare evasion. It's actually a much bigger issue on the buses than the subways. And it's something that, on one hand, no one should evade the fare. Like, I think it should be paid. But this is also one of those problems where if the MTA had better gates like they have in other countries, one couldn't really evade the fare on the subway, and you also wouldn't have cops running around with guns. So you kind of start there with there should just be better security, physical security infrastructure at the subway stations, which you see in other foreign metro systems. And of course, the MTA and most American authorities and bureaucracies are very bad at spending money and run way over budget. So things that you could do in Asia and in Europe for a fraction of the cost become these insane endeavors where it should be very easy to secure subway stations and build just nice new gates. So one doesn't hop the turnstile, and then therefore one is not being chased by a cop with a gun. So it's kind of like all these various problems converging kind of at one time. But, you know, also New York is a real problem, which we've talked about actually on the show before, dealing with mentally ill people. There's a lot of mentally ill people on the streets who should not be on the streets. I think one thing I'll say about Eric Adams, and he's been correct about, is that authorities need to be more aggressive about getting mentally ill people help and getting them to secure facilities, not prisons, but places where they can really be medicated and kind of have their lives restored to a degree. But at the same time, you know, sending a cop out with a gun is not the way to do it. And you also need the infrastructure, you need the facilities, you need the mental health services, the psychiatric hospitals, which we closed down over the many decades, to house these sort of people. So you see kind of an episode of real incompetence in the NYPD, which isn't new. And then I think you take all these bigger macro issues, and this is an incident that you wouldn't really see in other countries. And I think if you speak to all these issues, you can kind of see why.
Very fair point.
Confluence of a lot of things. Last thing, Ross, to that point about incompetence, you can put this up on the screen. So the police said on Monday they were searching for a man who allegedly removed that knife from the scene of that police shooting at the Brooklyn subway station. That contradicted an earlier claim that they had recovered the weapon from the scene. They said later that it was a different knife. So what exactly is going on here, as best we can tell?
I mean, I would say just from reports, incompetence, and also could be lying involved. I mean, police do lie, but I'd say never underestimate rank incompetence. You know, I'm a bit of an Occam's razor person where I tend to think, okay, you know, I think the average, not the average person, but I think I'd say a lot of people in politics think, oh, this is odd conspiracy, right? And then I think most of the time, like the Trump assassination attempt, the more you read about it, the more you realize it was just a real screw up. I mean, a real security failure and lack of coordination. So here at the police, I mean, look, the NYPD is not, I would say on one hand, it's a better trained police force than a lot of others across America. I'd rather deal with the NYPD than some like small time police that are paid less money and go through less training and don't have sort of the awareness of these kinds of situations. At the same time, look, you've got a lot of, you know, cops who are in their, I don't know much about these police officers. A lot of them just in their 20s, and they didn't really get much education, and they do some training, and then they're on the force at like 22, 23. And you get problems like this. And so I do think we need, honestly, better policing. I don't think we need the absence of policing, but we do need better police on the force. And that's a bigger conversation, right? But I do think, like, I think of policing like the German model. Germany has like a highly trained police force, from what I understand, and they go through like years of sort of education and really are prepared to be out in the world. I do think with NYPD and most American police, you're giving very young, inexperienced people guns. You're telling them go out and go to these neighborhoods that are, you know, not like the neighborhoods they know. And I don't know much about this police officer, but that's typically what you see.
Yeah, it's
good
sort of a
points.
confluence of some of the, the worst ills of American society: untreated mental illness, relatively compared to other similarly developed countries, violent society, cops that are insufficiently trained, who are, perhaps fearful in the situation anyway. So, and it ends in absolute horror. Ross, thank you so much for breaking all these issues down, because I've been trying to figure out what the hell's going on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. We appreciate you.
Always happy to be here. Thank you so much.
It's our
see you.
pleasure.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.